Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Jessica Corvo, and I am so super duper excited to introduce you one of my nearest and dearest friends, Eric. Now, I'm a survivor of domestic violence, specifically family violence. And even though domestic violence affects on average between 10 and 12 million people on an annual basis, there's a lot of cases that don't get recorded, and even few are survivors from family violence. So this is actually extremely special opportunity to hear this amazing hero story, kind of what Eric has been through, what he overcame, a little bit of the details and how his mind operates, and then what he's currently doing right now. So with that said, I'm gonna let him share all the details, but I will let you know he is a professionally Olympic level certified coach. So if you want to talk about results, this guy defines it. If you open up Webster's dictionary, his picture is going to be right next to results and Gold Crusher. That said, how are you today, Eric?
I'm fine, Jess. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having time to talk with us and, just share your story because it is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And so if we can't talk about it now, when are we going to talk about it?
That's true. And thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. Hello, everyone. I just give you a little bit of background. I was born in Philadelphia, and from the age of 2, my parents started abusing me, and I didn't know why. I just know that they loved my little brother. They did not like me. And I'm giving you guys the short version. But from the age of 2, no more birthday gifts, no more Christmas gifts, locked up in the closet, tied up, stripped naked, beaten all day, went to school with black eye, bloody nose, busted lip. Back then, there was no child abuse laws like they are now. And, kids used to tease me, which one of your parents, effed you up this weekend. So those are things that I went through all the way up to like age 17. And when locked up in the closet, I was up to 4 days straight. One time my mom actually tried to put me in the oven and pulled out the trays and turned it on. She put my hand over a burner one time. Things like that. Just about every day, if not every other day, she told me how much she hated me, wish I wasn't born. My mother and father fought all the time, and I knew it was because of me, because I knew that they both hated me. Like I said, they loved my little brother. And years later, my mother and father, one of their fights, New Year's Day, 1978, they had their last fight. My father shot and killed my mother in front of me. And when he did that, that just totally messed me up, mentally and everything else. But, and then I went to the Air Force, and then years later, I find out the reason why they hated me so much is because I'm not his kid. Mm-hmm. I actually have another father. And so years later, I went and tried to find my biological father, found him, talked to him for a little bit, and then he disappeared. And then to come to find out, he disappeared because he killed his wife. So I'm 2 for 2. I have 2 fathers, one who raised me and another one who my biological father, and they both killed their wives in a fit of rage. Mm-hmm. All I can say is, like, when I was locked up in the closet, though, I did not want to be like my parents. And so I started learning to get inside my head and started reprogramming myself, throw myself through different scenarios of how I was going to act, because I noticed how I was doing certain things, and we won't go into detail right now, but I was doing certain things to animals and stuff like that. And I realized this is not a good path. So I was like, I got to change my ways. And I saw this, I think it was a PBS show or something. I saw about, serial killers and stuff. And I'm not saying I'm a super intelligent, but I did qualify in the Air Force as a nuclear weapons specialist. And I designed computer systems, from conceptual to full-fledged implementation. So I guess I'm pretty high up there on the IQ level. And so I didn't want to turn out like those guys, doing what they were doing. So I was like, okay, I got to get inside my head. I got to reprogram myself. And I went through that process, and this is what I have. This is what you see now. This is me. And, after getting out the Air Force and everything, I decided, because I couldn't run track as a child because I wanted to. And I ended up making the Air Force team when I got older. But as a kid, I couldn't run because I didn't want anyone to see the bruises on my body. And I would go out for the team, had the sweatsuit on, make the team all the time. I was the fastest kid in school. And coach would say, you got to run, but I would not run. I ended up coaching for the team because I wouldn't run, but I was always out there because my little brother and my god brother ran. So I was always out there. And so the coach had me to work with the girls, and the girls did really well. So they gave me a Letterman's jacket and everything. So, as I became an adult, I said, you know what, I'm going to run track.
Yeah.
And so I did a little bit of running, and was running at 10.02, ran for the Air Force, kicked butt, did great. Came back to the States, and next thing you know, I got hit by a car, shattered my left leg. There goes the track career. And
Yeah.
so then I became a coach.
Yeah.
So I did my training, went all through a bunch years of certifications and training and stuff. So I'm a certified USA track and field coach, and I'm a certified World Athletics Olympic level coach internationally.
Absolutely. We're gonna pause right there because there's so much to unpack, so much to
No,
unpack. So I
sorry.
think from just a humanity perspective, Eric, I am so excited that you survived everything. Nobody should have been subjected to what you've been subjected to. And I just want to hold space and honor this moment on how incredibly resilient you are and on how your soul might be a cheeky monster for surviving or for picking this human experience. But nobody deserved any of that. And I'm so proud of the work that you've done and the ability to know that you had a decision to break those cycles. So to honor you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And
You
I
know,
think, a lot of
I'm
the times we forget that we have a choice because we think
yeah.
this is what we were born into and this is the only thing that we can do. And it takes a certain amount of, grit and I don't even know what the word would be, but the strong spirit, that fire in your belly
People
that
say that, but I look at it as I didn't have a choice. I didn't want to be like them. I didn't want to be angry. I didn't want to be bitter.
yeah,
And, I was heading down that path, and I'm like, this is not the way to go,
yeah.
so I
It's
had
that
to figure out,
warrior spirit, that fighting spirit.
yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's go back to
Mhm.
when you're talking about getting locked into a closet and when you are in your mind, it's been proven through so many different situations, scholars, academics, science, whatever, on how everything starts from the mind. So
Yes.
even though your family might have considered that a punishment, it was actually a hidden present because it allowed you to start cultivating some skills that you use throughout your life, proven by all of your incredible achievements, is having that time to kind of get into your own head and figure out how to reprogram. Now one of your public sharings, so the workshops that you've done focuses on that mindset, and I can't remember off the top of my head and what you call it, but it's kind of like the reprogramming. Can you kind of explore that a little bit with us?
Yeah. So basically what I did was, I was getting bitter, getting angry, like I said, doing some bad things to animals in the neighborhood and stuff. And so when they started locking me back up in the closet, I was like, okay, either I can go crazy and go psycho, or I can tell myself, and try to figure out. And I didn't know what I was doing. I admit, I totally honestly admit, I knew nothing about what I was doing, but I just started running myself through different scenarios. And instead of acting like the way they acted, I was going to act this way. Instead of thinking this way, I was going to think another way. So I started telling myself, instead of doing this, and I even found myself in school in different situations where I would just act like, this is not a good thing to do. I should not do this. I should not, think this way. And I was like, instead of acting or thinking this, I'm going to think this. And so, and I would sometimes evaluate myself and look in the mirror. I did a lot of looking in the mirror and looking at myself and say, this is me, this is what I am, and this is what I want to be. I did a lot of that, looking in the mirror and going deep inside myself and saying, okay, this is not the way I want to be. So how do I want to be? And so I would picture myself on the way that I was going to be when I could get away from those crazy ass people. Sorry, if I could say the A word, you
Yeah.
know, if I can get away from them, at some point. I was saving up some money and I was working and stuff. I didn't know where I was going to go, but I was working. But I'm like, I got to prepare myself for the future on how I'm going to be and how I want to be. And so I saw different things, and sometimes I would just have it mentally, and then other things I would like write it down. I'm like, okay, instead of acting like this, I'm going to act like this. Instead of doing this, I'm going to do this. Instead of thinking this way, I'm going to think this way. And I just started systematically reprogramming all of the bad that pretty much they coded into me and replaced it with a new code.
Yeah.
You can have a great.
I think a lot of times, like in society, in order for us to do that, because there's a lot of visual people. So in order to do that, people are just like, oh, I want to be in the services. And then they reverse engineer, what's it going to take for me to be in the services? Or, oh, I want to be a doctor. And then reverse engineer, what are the steps needed for me to become a doctor? So when you're in that space, because you're a teenager, I mean, a child, for all of that, I understand as a survivor, I totally understand. But for people that aren't within that survivor space and they don't understand the mindset and the mentality required for survival, what was your long term? What was that light that you had that helped you decide what was, good versus bad, or what was healthy versus unhealthy?
I guess, well, if you want, like, my motivation was the fact that, people say you're not supposed to hate your parents. You're not supposed to hate your parents. Oh, I hated my parents. I told you what they were doing to me was wrong. I'm like, and I even had my grandmother say, oh, you should never hate them. And they knew, everybody in my family knew what was going on. But I used that hate as my motivation, to say, you know what, you're not going to win. You're doing this to me because you don't like me and you want to hurt me, but you're not going to win. I'm not going to allow you to beat me. I'm not going to allow you to win.
Yeah.
So that was basically my motivation, if that answers your question.
Yeah, I want to also add on how a lot of people stay in abusive situations out of helplessness. And I don't say that as a victim mindset. I say that as just completely apathetic and just defeated. Because when somebody shares, just like you had said, when you share what's happening to your grandmother, and your grandmother is just like, oh, you can't hate your parents, and oh, family is family, or whatever, normalized society thing here, it's a bunch of horse poop as far as I'm concerned. I'm sorry, totally. But when people treat you in a certain way, there's expectations that go along with it. Parents are supposed to keep you safe. And the moment they violate that, they no longer have that opportunity or that privilege to call themselves your parents, full stop, end of story. And so whenever people are saying, oh, your family is family, okay, let's take a step back and define, what does family mean to you? Let's look at that.
That's exactly what I was thinking, because I'm like, if they really love me, they wouldn't do these things to me. So I'm like, no, they don't get that privilege, So it's like, no, I hated my parents, but I used that as my motivation to say, okay, you know what? You're not going to win. I'm not going to allow you to win. There's no way I'm going to allow you to make me be this evil, bad person. It's not going to happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so many times that it's just so lonely, and you have to, learn how to stand on your own. I mean, having conversations now, there's a lot of people in my community that say we support you. And I get myself in hot water all the time. Like, if it's not hitting my bank account, you're not supporting me. when you're a survivor of family violence. Yes. You learn how to clap for yourself. You learn how to solve your own problems. And then for everything else, it's if you're not building something with me, I don't define that as support. I mean, absolutely. I don't need my people on the weekends to have a meal with. I mean, yes, community is very important, and I will, give, respect to that. At the same time, when you're talking about building communities of high achievers and really defining what it means to be a support function to somebody who's survived family violence, it hits different. It's very different.
Yeah. And it's funny because I don't look at myself as an achiever or anything. I just look at myself as I just had to do what I had to do. I don't look at people say, oh, you had a choice. I'm like, I don't see it as a choice. I just see it as, this is what I had to do, or they would win. And that was my adversary. They were my adversary. They're not going to win. They're not going to screw me up in the head. They're not going to make me hate the world. They're not going to do it. And that was it. So I just had to figure out ways of combating that and making sure that they didn't win. So I use
psychology, they call it sublimation. In psychology, they call it sublimation, which is turning a society bad situation into a positive, so like a harmful into a helpful. And I think, like, for that, it's very interesting that you don't consider yourself achiever, because from the outside you are 100% an achiever. And that is also, a survivor trauma response, because we don't think, you don't think, I don't think, and in time, you don't think you have an option. You do, because you can, lay down and accept
Right.
it, or you can make something of it. But in that
Right.
time, we lack that fear or that switch. And it's just like, no, it's game time. Let's do it.
Yeah.
For me, it's tighten the
Well,
ponytail, crack the neck, and all right, let's play.
yeah. And it's funny because I would think of it that way, so when they was doing certain things, it was like, you know what, you can do all you want, but at some point, unless you kill me, I'm going to be out of this house. And when I am, I want to make sure that I'm in this world, not that world. So
It's one of the scariest things too, because
yes.
when everything's been taken away from you, you operate differently because you have nothing to lose. You're just
Yeah.
like, oh, you're gonna hurt my feelings. My parents don't even like me, so beat
Yeah.
that. Or like, we're gonna strip your reputation or whatever, because people can be nonsense, right? And you're just
Yeah.
like, go ahead. I'm a survivor of domestic violence, family violence, and I talk about it. It's
Yeah.
still, there's still a stigma, and it's still not socially acceptable. So what reputation do you think you're gonna take from me?
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
mean,
so
yeah,
it's,
pretty much everything was already taken in the beginning. So I'm
yeah,
rebuilding,
yeah,
and
you move
just to make
different that
sure
way.
everyone understands, I'm constantly rebuilding. There are times when I
100%.
think of myself, I'm like, why, and I have to reevaluate myself and go,
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
what,
yeah,
like sometimes at the end of the day, I'm like, why did I do that? Or why did I act that way? And I'm like,
yeah,
that's still in me. And then I'm
yeah,
like, okay, you know what? When that situation comes up again, I'm going to act this way now. I'm not going to do
100%,
that,
100%.
so, and one of the main things that I have to make sure that, people understand is I had to identify all my triggers.
Yeah.
I know what can set me off, and I know what they are. So I develop what I call circuit breakers.
Mhm.
So when that trigger is about to hit, it's like, stop, nope, you got to do this, reverse it, think this way. So I know what they are, and I know what hormones are getting released, and what it's setting off inside me. And I'm like, nope, I'm going to do this instead.
Yeah, well,
So
that's also because that's a survival technique, right? Because when you're the recipient of other people failing to manage their mental health or their emotional well-being, aka abuse, you learn how to operate and fit into that box.
right,
So in terms of trauma responses, you can either, fawn, become like a people pleaser, you can become invisible, like you can freeze, or you just have to take up as little space as possible, because when you take up a little bit of space and almost invisible, you don't get hurt.
right,
So
yeah,
you learn, self-control as a default, so that you don't get the
yes.
crap kicked out of you,
It's a
or so you don't
background
hurt.
task that runs in the back of my mind all the time. And I
Absolutely.
monitor how I act, what I
Absolutely.
do, how I think. I
100%.
have to.
100%. And
I
it's
have
so
to.
interesting too, because when we're in a society that generally speaking lacks a whole lot of self-control, you're just
Right.
like, no, come into the
Yeah.
survivor community. This is ingrained in our being. This is because
Yeah.
we
And
know
it's funny because
each
when I'm
misstep can result in death. And it's not to be
right.
dramatic, that's just truth.
Right. Yeah. It's funny because when I talk to certain people like that understand like you do, they use certain buzzwords and stuff. And I'm like, I didn't have all of that when I was a kid. I wish I
Yeah.
did. I wish
Yeah.
I had somebody to tell me that. I was just doing it from, what I thought was right, being in the closet. I had to entertain myself somehow.
Yeah.
And though that's how I started, entertaining myself, was remaking myself,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
running through how my life was going to be, and looking at how other people acted, who had good families, and how they acted and how they treated their kids and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's what
Yeah.
I did.
Absolutely. I mean, so to kind of like tie it back and stuff, I don't
Mhm.
like comparing trauma because everything is different, right? For my trauma, it was very difficult because I grew up with a very supportive family. And then as I got independent, that's when the episodes started happening.
Sorry.
And so
Okay.
for me, that messed with my head and my heart, because I'm like, wait a second, did I have a sunny disposition on my entire childhood? Was I viewing it as actual reality? And it messed with me like big time. 10
Right.
years of
Yeah.
therapy in 4 different
Yeah.
countries.
I'm
And
so
so
sorry, but yeah, I
I
can see that how that would just totally reverse and throw everything that you learned right out the window.
because you're just like, well, wait, if this was on how it was, like, from start to finish, you
Right.
can kind of understand, not saying that it's easier, but at least there's the history,
Yeah.
right? But then as soon as something switches, it's so hard to kind of
Right.
grasp, because you just
But
don't know.
yeah, yours was dramatic, trauma, like instantaneous, and mine was kind of like, it just grew, through my life cycle.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
No,
both
I've
of us.
had so much shame with mine, like talking about it, trying to find different ways. I'm like, I don't even know. Sometimes I feel like I'm
Right.
crazy. So, I mean, I just want to like honor that too, because it's very different, and there's so many different types of trauma. And
Yes.
you know, again, it's not about comparison, but I just think that your spirit is just so evolved and strong because as a child and not having something taken away, but being brought into something is actually harder, in my opinion. Again, it's not to compare traumas, it's just as a compliment, because if
Yeah.
you have something good, then when it's less good, you have a comparison. When you're brought up into something, to have that within, to know this isn't good for me, this isn't what I need, this isn't what I want, there's something very special about you. And I think that is what sets you apart, because I know that you do a lot of public speaking, you're stepping into like the corporate workshops and stuff. And so when people are looking to hire people, I think that's going to be, you know, one of the biggest things is the differentiation between other speakers is you have that from within, from, you know, basically birth. And so this is going to be like a big principle for a lot of like the baseline for your discussions on number one, you're born this way, you're born with it, right? And then number two, that self-reflection and that constant, this is happening in my external world. Let's take a step back and let's view our internal world and then execute successfully is like a massive value add to any corporate or any company that wants to hire you. Again, as a public speaker, motivational speaker, or anything like that. Yeah, so I just, you know, big props for all of that, because from one survivor to another, there is a difference on being able to execute.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I just got to, I guess, basically, I was like, okay, when I turn 17, things going to be different, you know, and that's kind of like what I envisioned. That was my long-term goal, was when I hit 17, I'm out of this house and everything else. And, you know, when I hit 17, my father shot and killed my mother. So,
Yeah.
you know, basically, you know, it was like 17, 18, yeah, you know,
You
I
don't, you
get the
don't, you don't
gist.
get, you don't get rattled easily, because this is
Yeah.
a,
So yeah, so 17, 18, around that time, yeah, my father shot and killed my mom. And then it was like, whew, you know, and it kind of just set me back a little bit, you know, we got on the drugs and stuff, but then it was like, nope, nope, nope. I gotta, you know, keep going and gotta get myself back together again, you know.
it's,
So yeah, that was it. That's the short version of my life.
yeah, I think another thing too, to just continue to support and promote the public speaking or the workshop aspect, it's you know, coming from the services. So you're an athlete within, you know, US services. That is incredible background and experience. Being a survivor of family violence is an incredible, you know, experience. And having a baseline for the violence that you've experienced is not comprehensible to the average person. So understanding that your baseline for normal behavior is so incredibly strong. I mean, it's dysfunctional, but we can all admit that anyone that
Yeah,
deals with it
yeah,
is completely not normal.
right.
And it's meant as a compliment. So it means that even though you come from this, your abilities to turn stuff into magical and beautiful and value add things is just absolutely incredible. So I think, you know, for anybody watching this, to me, the key takeaways are going to be, number one, Eric is an amazing human being who survived so many different things, not just with class, but with grace and with a little bit of fire in his spirit. When I say a little, I'm underselling that because he's incredible. And he's also been
Thanks.
hosting communities all over the world. So Eric, you know, in addition to, you know, being a talented, you know, runner for the services and service person for our country, and also helping kids cultivate these skills in order to, you know, be their own best version, I think it's just absolutely incredible. So what is one key takeaway for the month of October as domestic violence awareness that you would like for anybody, survivor or not, to kind of hang on to?
I would say the best thing is never let anyone else dictate how you are going to control your future. It's your future. So
Own it.
don't let anyone else have that control over you. It's yours. So, and don't give anyone that control. Never give anyone that control.
Absolutely. You can't control your external world, but you can control how you're going to
Yourself.
perceive it and what you're going to do
Yes.
with it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, Eric, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your story, and thanks for being able to spitfire some ideas back and forth. And this
Thank
is the
you.
first of many. And for anybody who is listening, Eric is a wonderful human being. He is he has a warrior mindset. He shared some of his kind of tips and tricks on how to cultivate a stronger mindset in order to get you through any type of adversity. It's not just family violence. It's just that's one of the hardest things. If you're talking about social structures, once you can get through that, everything is a cakewalk. So if you guys are in need to strengthen your mental tenacity for your teams, if you're looking to build stronger communications between your teams, or if you're just looking for a little bit of motivation because people, they struggle with the pandemic, and sometimes
Right.
a healthy dose of perspective is all you need to kind of move through it. You should
Yes.
definitely get in touch with Eric, and he is more than happy to share one of his existing programs or create something special for you guys.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye, guys.